Well, chapter 12 and 13 go together. There's a lot of verses, though, because he says it a couple of times, each thought. So it sounds a couple of times like, didn't we just read that verse? And it's like, yeah, we did. But he repeats it, obviously, because that's a good way to teach people. Say it again. And maybe a little different of a context. But the theme here in these chapters are the type of worship God is wanting is not a big umbrella of all types of worship, but it's a certain type of worship that's pleasing to him. And not to go outside those boundaries, but to keep it inside the boundaries. And then also that there is always going to be a strong pull from false teachers, prophets, people with a lot of power, a lot of charisma. And sometimes they're from amongst us, and sometimes they're your very close, intimate family. But you have to reject any teaching. So again here, it's a narrow focus that God's looking for, not a broad focus of worship. And in chapter 12 here, he says, "These are the statutes and judgments which you shall be careful to observe in the land which the Lord your God your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the earth." That's an interesting little phrase he throws in here. This is it for all the days you live on the earth. It's almost saying you'll live, you'll go into captivity for 70 years, you'll come back. 70 AD will come, you come back, and the end days, whenever you find yourself living on earth, that land is yours all your days. And this is something that you've got to get and understand. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations which you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains, on the hills, under the green tree. You shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, burn their wooden images with fire. You shall cut down the carved images of the gods, destroy their names from that place. You shall not worship the Lord your God and with such things. So, what typically happens when one nation or one kingdom, and often that kingdom is made up of a religion like the Muslim religion, rather than tearing down the temples or the Christian churches, the Catholic churches that were there before them, like they did in Istanbul or Constantinople when they did it, they repurpose them. And they make these giant cathedrals now. They sort of change the roof lining a little bit and make it look like a mosque. And so you're going to go into these places, and the highest mountain, the best place to build a sanctuary, you'll find one there. And the most beautiful trees in the forest, under these beautiful trees, maybe they planted those trees there on purpose to have this beautiful garden oasis worship area with this creek going by. And you're going to say, wow, man, they really came up with a really great place under these trees to worship. Or these spectacular buildings, you're going, man, this must have taken them a few hundred years to build this thing and carry those stones. And he's saying, no, I don't want even any residue of these pagan practices. Do not repurpose the locations they built that seem really like great locations. Don't repurpose them, even though they're up on a high mountain. It's interesting that most religions in the world, and I think this is man, again, he often wants to build a place of worship way up high on the tallest mountain. I guess maybe they feel they're closer to God or whatever, I don't know. But he's just saying, there's going to be a human temptation to want to do this, but this is not what I want. And again, I end up golfing Monday, and I end up golfing with this guy that was an atheist, and we started talking about the Lord, and he just kept asking me questions after questions. He said, well, you don't have any idea what the right religion is because they're all so identical. And it's like, no, all the religions are from Satan. I don't I'm not a part of a religion. I'm part of just following Jesus. But I said, you're right in the fact that Satan is fine with whatever religion you pick, as long as it oppresses you, as long as it keeps you feeling guilty and controlled and like you're always failing God and you need to do more and try harder and submit to the organization and to their leadership and do what they say. Yeah. Paul said it in Romans 1:25. He just said the bottom line is they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. All the religions do this. And they worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So some man they worship, whether it's Muhammad or Joseph Smith or whatever, they've got this guy out there who's the guru and we need him and we need to follow his teachings and do what he says. And it's all a lie. And, the guy's like, well, that's why I don't need a religion. I said, you don't need religion, but do you need the truth? Oh yeah, the truth. What's the truth? I was talking to Pilate. And I said, what about righteousness? Do you think we should have righteousness? Yeah, of course we had right. Well, whose definition of righteousness? They're very different. All the religions have a very different definition, and you'll find that Christianity is the only one that's consistent with the God of nature and nature's God, in that we can see clearly that we need to worship him and the truth about him and what he proclaims as righteousness. Well, this will be the theme from here on out. Every king, every prophet, so you got 1 Kings, 2 Kings, that's going to talk about how all these kings turned back to the gods of the land. And then in Isaiah and Jeremiah, they're all going back. Now, this is much later on. They're going back to this pagan type of worship. And Isaiah and Jeremiah are trying to persuade them. But of course, before that happened, they were creating their own way to worship that pleased them, therefore it pleases God. I'm afraid there's a lot of worship, even today, in modern day Protestant Christendom, that I think it's very pleasing to man. The worship, the bands, the lights, the smoke, the professionalism, the sound quality. I think it's very pleasing to us, but I think that we need to stop and say, is it pleasing to the Lord? Twice in the years that I pastored in Calvary, San Diego, we had the big band, we had the big stage, 1,500 seat sanctuary, we had it all. And I just canceled it twice. I just told all the guys, I'm just grieved. I feel that it's just this performance. I feel like you're all prima donnas, and I can't, I'm just grieved. I'm personally grieved by it. And I just went back to singing a couple of songs a cappella and preach a sermon, and we went home. Or I'd have somebody come in, one of the guys plays a guitar in a home fellowship and gets about every third chord right and has an okay voice, and he's up there leading worship, and God's Spirit's falling all over the place. Because I just know that man, it's his nature to try to perfect in the flesh what God has always desired to be done in the Spirit. And those are things we need to keep asking. And that's the question. So he repeats it again here in Deuteronomy 12, verse 5 now. But you shall seek the place where the Lord your God chooses, out of all the tribes, to put his name for his dwelling place, there you shall go. Now, we happen to know the end of the chapter, right? Or the end of the book. We know where the one tribe he picks. Who is it? Judah. And where's the one place he ultimately picks? Jerusalem, within the tribe of Judah. But there would be a few other places along the way. In Joshua 24, they settled in Shechem for a while. And then in Judges 20, they were at Bethel for a while. And then one of the better known places is in Shiloh, where they landed for quite a while in Judges and 1 Samuel. And so there were other places before they finally picked Judah and Jerusalem. But in verse 6, we're in Deuteronomy 12, verse 6. There you shall take your burnt offerings, your sacrifice, your tithes, the heave offerings, your vowed offerings, your freewill offerings, the firstborn of your herds and your flocks, and there you shall eat before the Lord your God. You shall rejoice in all to which you have put your hand, you and your household, which the Lord your God has blessed you. So even though you're big tribes, even though you're spread out, when you get into the land, there's always going to be one place that you come together to bring your offerings, to bring your tithes, and to do all the various sacrifices. It's this thing that we're going to find out in a minute. It's supposed to be a very joyful thing where they all come together and it's a celebration together. But it's not going to be convenient. There's not going to be 10 locations and one around the block next to you. It's going to be one tribe is going to have the great location, and the other 11 tribes are not going to have a great location. They're going to have to travel to where that one tribe is, and it's in that location. And again, he says, you shall eat there and rejoice. He'll say this several times. Now, what you'll find in chapter 12 and 13, he's going to say the same thing over and over again. But he says something interesting here. He's going to tell us in chapter 13, verse 1, but also he mentions it that once you cross over the Jordan, this is the way it's going to be. So it appears that while they're in the tent and there's one tabernacle, that they're sort of all creating a worship within the tribes that's unique to their tribe. And it's sort of allowed to have happened in these 40 years. But he's saying that's going to come to an end. So when we get to Joshua, Joshua comes in and says, it's coming to an end. Get all the idols that your parents are supposed to get rid of. We're getting rid of them. And then Joshua's going to say, all you guys know you should have been circumcising your child on the 8th day, your male children. What are we going to find out at the beginning of Joshua? And we're talking a month from this point. They haven't been circumcised for 40 years. So these people were not respecting what Moses had been saying. Their parents didn't, and now they didn't. I like what Dave Guzik says on this. Much of what is called worship today in today's church really isn't worship. It's self-focused. It's man-focused. It's personal experience instead of being God-focused. Much of today's worship is measured by how the worshiper feels instead of being measured by how God is honored and worshiped. And this definitely shows up in the polls. 70% of baby boomers said they attend worship service strictly out of a sense of duty. There's no rejoicing in this place. 80% say they would be just as strong and just as good as a Christian if they didn't go to church at all. And it's interesting, if you look at the percent of people that claim to be evangelical Christians in our country that never attend church at all. So you say, well, talk a little more on that. That's what this Sunday sermon's about. Don't forsake the gathering of the brethren, especially as you see the day of the Lord drawing near. And if you watch the news today, he's coming anytime. It's happening here, guys. We'll talk about it Sunday. Well, we're now in verse 10. But when you cross over the Jordan, this again is going to come back to chapter 13 again. When you cross over the Jordan, he says in verse 10, and you dwell in the land which the Lord your God has given you to inherit, he gives you rest from all your enemies round about so that you dwell in safety. Then there will be a place, a singular place, where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. There you shall bring all that I commanded you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifice, your tithes, your heave offerings, your choice offerings, which you vowed to the Lord. You say, didn't he just say that 3 verses earlier? Yes, he did. That's what I said. He's repeating himself to the yin-yang here of just trying to explain. I guess, they were looking at their iPads and not paying attention. I don't know. But he says in verse 12, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and your daughters and your male and your female servants, the Levite who is within your gates, since he has no portion nor inheritance with you. So it's not this, religion for old people. It's not this religion for young people. It's not this religious thing for the Levites. It's not this thing for just Jews and those are the rich. It's like it's everybody comes. And the kids are rejoicing. The old people are rejoicing. The Levites are rejoicing. The servant class is rejoicing. The lordship class or whatever is everybody is just coming to that one place. For 11 of the tribes, it's not convenient at all. and they come, but it's never this burdensome thing. They're all rejoicing. And then he says, so take heed in verse 13 to yourself that you do not offer your burnt offering in every place that you see, that suits you, that seems good to you. But in the place which the Lord chooses, in one of your tribes, there shall offer your burnt offerings, and there shall you do all that I commanded you. Now, this is going to be a theme in the book of Judges. Every man did what was right in his own sight. And in particular, in Judges 17 and Judges 21, and Judges 17:6, it says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his eyes. You want to hear a wild and crazy story? Read Judges 17. It's this guy who makes an ephod and tells one of his kids, it's not even the tribe of Levi, hey, you're our priest for our family. And he anoints him and goes through the ceremony like it's sort of a semi-priestly thing, I guess they remember. And his son is the priest, but then lo and behold, this young guy comes through who's a Levite and says, hey, what you doing? Nothing. I'll pay you a lot of money. Be our personal priest. And here, we'll make you this personal chapel. And it's like, oh, sure, that sounds great. And then a band of people come, and they conquer them, and they basically put the sword to this guy's neck and says, we're taking this ephod, we're taking all the gold and silver, and we'll kill you, or you can be our priest. He's like, love to be your priest. And so he goes away as their priest. End of story. It's just, there's no end, there's no boundary to how crazy it gets when people do what's right in their own eyes. And then in Judges 21, I won't go into that, but an equally crazy story. But no, it's not convenient. And this is, again, in Americanism. It's a consumer thing. Is it convenient? It's too far to walk in the parking place. The chairs aren't as comfortable as I like. The color system in the sanctuary is too bright or not bright enough, or the music is too loud or too soft, or the preacher preaches too short or too long, or the people are it's amazing how this consumer mentality is so not of God. It's just, I'm coming to honor the Lord. For me, I'm going to honor the Lord. And can I do that in this place? And if God can't be honored because there's so much smoke and lights and there's so much sense of I need to keep people coming by giving them the best show that humans can give another person, to keep them coming, and you sort of have that angst, it's sort of like, I hope you come back. I hope we were pleasing to you. I hope that it suited you. And you cannot fall into that. It's like, as Calvary Chapels, we do, what we do is pretty much the opposite of what the seeker-friendly movement does. I mean, you either want to hear the Bible or you don't. And if you're coming to have a Sunday morning worship experience, you're probably not going to get what you're thinking you're going to get. That everybody else in town's doing, and God bless you, go do it. It's probably one closer to your house. You can go a block away, and it'll give you that experience. But again, here he's saying, here's the proof in the pudding. When you are right, doing it in the one way, in the one place, in the singular manner that honors God, you're going to see where the Spirit of the Lord is. There is that spirit of joy and celebration. And so there you shall rejoice. Now, what do we find when we get to the end of Old Testament, the book of Malachi, the people, I hate having to come up here. It's too hard. It's too difficult. It's too costly. And God's like, sorry, I didn't mean to burden you. Stop. I don't want it anymore. So 1 Thessalonians 5:16, rejoice always. In Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. God loves us to rejoice in him. He is definitely rejoicing over us. Well, in verse 15 now, all the way to verse 28, we're going to read a bunch here. However, you shall slaughter and eat meat within all your gates, wherever your heart desires, according to the blessings of the Lord your God, which he has given you, and unclean and clean may eat of it, as a gazelle and the deer alike. So, just to clarify, it started out where he just said, when you cross over the Jordan, they've been living in the desert. They've been eating what? For 40 years. Manna. Now they're not going to be living in a tent anymore. They're going to be living in a city with a gate. And there's going to be all kinds of wildlife that they can start eating. And now he clarifies. Now, again, in the pagan religions or the pagan civilizations, every meat you had was first sacrificed to the pagan gods. You never just killed something and ate it. You killed it and it was a sacrifice. Even if you're out in the woods by yourself, it always was given in worship to the pagan god. But he's saying, no, in this thing, you need to decipher. Is this just something I'm killing to eat for dinner? Or is this being killed in worship to God? Now, if you're just killing it to eat it for dinner, go for it. That's something you can do. It's not all the meat that you kill has to be this spiritual worship. But he does make it clear, only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it on the earth like water. So that was one of the clear things. Life is in the blood. God wants us to remember that point. And so don't eat the blood and the meat. Of course, we get to the New Testament, Paul says all things are permissible. But then he makes it clear, though, in verse 17, you may not eat within your gates the tithe of your grain or your new wine or your oil of the firstborn of your herd or your flock or any of the offering which you vow of your freewill offering and of the heave offering of your hand. Now, we're going to find out there's going to be 6 cities of refuge, and there's going to be priests there. And then there's going to be priests that will have the outside of these cities and villages as their land. So there will be priests scattered throughout Israel. And so he's like, hey, we'll just, instead of going all the way to that place God chooses, which eventually is Jerusalem, let's just do it right here. I'll just give you my tithe right now. I'll just give you this lamb. Let's just kill it and have a sacrifice. And priest, you can have it right here in our city. And he said, no. You cannot do that. Even though it may look like everything's there, it's not. In verse 18, but you must eat them before the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your God chooses, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant and your Levite who is within your gates, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God to all which you put in your hands. You're like, didn't we just read that verse twice already? Deja vu all over again. Yes, we just did. Verse 19, take heed to yourself that you do not forsake the Levite as long as you live in your land. When the Lord your God enlarges your border as he has promised, you shall say, let me eat meat, because you long to eat meat. You may eat as much meat as your heart desires. If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you may slaughter from your herd and from your flock, which the Lord has given you, just as I have commanded you, and you may eat within your gates as much as your heart desires. Just as a gazelle and the deer are eaten, you may eat them, and unclean alike, you may eat them. Only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is in the life, which you may eat of the life in the meat. You shall not eat it, you shall pour it on the earth like water. You shall not eat it, that it may go well with you and your children after you, that what is right in the sight of the Lord. Only the holy thing which you have in your vowed offering you shall take and go to the place which the Lord chooses. Verse 27, and you shall offer your burnt offerings, the meat offerings, the blood of the altar of your God, and the blood of your sacrifice shall be poured out on the altar of your God, and you shall eat the meat. Observe and obey all these words which I command you, that it may go well with you and your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. So, Deuteronomy, this is where Moses now is restating everything that we heard in Ezra and Leviticus and Numbers, and he's now restating it. And sometimes he states it actually clarifies. Like, wow, okay, it wasn't that clear in Exodus or Leviticus, but man, it's clear here in Deuteronomy. Well, the opposite also happens. Sometimes he gives the Reader's Digest version on certain points, and it's like, I'm not sure what he was saying there. I think it was clear when it was said back in the book of Leviticus, or clear back in Numbers. And this is one of those passages where I know it's hard to believe sometimes pastors talk longer than they should. And I have not experienced it personally, but I've heard of that. And it seems like Moses is maybe here. I mean, that's obviously God's word. But nevertheless, it's very wordy and clearly driving a point home, not just giving facts. In verse 29 now, and 32, now he's going to turn and says, beware of the false gods. And this is going to lead us right into chapter 13. When the Lord your God cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, you displace them and dwell in their land. Take heed to yourself that you do not ensnare to follow them. After they are destroyed from before you, that you do not inquire of their gods, saying, how did those nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. So man is feeble-minded, okay? We are all feeble-minded. And what's the old saying? Curiosity, what? Killed the cat. I had a personal experience of that when I was in high school. I was at my older sister's house and my brother-in-law's house. And they had some little kittens, and my sister took the Thanksgiving turkey and put it way up on the refrigerator, way up on the refrigerator, and had it in a pan to defrost. And we went out and played some football, and came back, and the turkey was off the refrigerator and had landed on one of the kittens. What the thing had done, it jumped all the way across from one counter, this little kitten, all the way up to grab that turkey, and you know how it has a netting around it? Got its claws in the net and pulled the thing right down on top of it and smashed it. Kitty cat all over the kitchen. It was horrible. And it makes me think of this, it's like, well, what are these rocks here for? And why did they build the altar that way? And I saw a piece of writing over here, and one guy told us this, and that'd be interesting. Let's see what that feels like if we worship that way. And he's saying, that's why you got to destroy it, get rid of it, burn it, don't have any knowledge of it. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way. For every abomination to the Lord which he hates, they have done to their gods. For they burn even their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. So you understand, when you start tiptoeing in that direction, how do they worship? Oh, let's try to, light candles like they do, or mix this incense like they do, or, worship, sing songs like this and they do. And then before you know it, it's going to take you to the end of that, which is infant sacrifice. Psalms 106. That's exactly what they did. In verse 32, whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it nor take away from it. That is said several times in Deuteronomy, and of course it's said all the way in the book of Revelation. You shall worship the Lord in the way that God chooses. And Jesus said in John 4:24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and what? Truth. I think it's emphasized there that it's not just any old idea of God will work, right? God is who he is, and he is not who he's not. You ever seen little kids little toddlers, they're not paying attention, and they have hold of their dad's hand, and they're not paying attention after church, and all of a sudden they're holding some other guy's hand. And the guy's just having a good time. The parents are watching their little son. He's walking around. Sometimes it lasts a long time. Then finally, the little kid looks up, and he's like, "Ah, what's going on here?" But what if the little kid looked up and goes, "Yeah, any fat white guy will do," and he just walks off with him? You say, okay, that may be your feelings, but that's not the big fat white guy's feelings. I'm your dad. No other dad will do. And so in the same way, he's saying that it's not just about the truths of God, it's God himself, who he is, his very spirit, his nature. When my kids lived in my house, I made it clear to them, very young age, that you're going to abide not just by what seems good to you and what's Christian, but you're going to abide by my convictions as long as you're in this house. And that was challenged a little bit along the way. In the same way, I sense God saying that here. It's like, no, these are my ways. These are my thoughts. This is my nature. And anything else is grievous. And of course, Satan is always taking God's truths and perverting them and running with it. And often it's more pleasing to man. And that's where man gets deceived. It's like, how can it not be of God when I have such a peace about it? How can it not be of God when it pleases me so greatly? And it's like, this is where we got to know the Lord and his nature. And boy, it's a sad story. Solomon, the wisest man on the earth, spent his last days building temples in Jerusalem in view of the temple that he built for God in his lifetime to all the pagan gods, including Moloch. And indeed, they did sacrifice their children to demons. King Ahaz of Judah, same thing in 2 Kings 16:3. The first one is 1 Kings 11:7 with Solomon. 1 Kings 16, Ahaz. And then the northern kingdoms in 2 Kings 17 did it, and that's how Assyria took them away captive, literally obliterated all of those kingdoms except for Judah and Benjamin because of this worship to these pagan gods. Then King Manasseh, what a wicked guy he was in 2 Kings 21. And then all the way up until the time of King Josiah, who put an end to it in 2 Kings 23:10. Well, now we come to chapter 13. If there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign and the wonder comes to pass, of which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or to the dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. I've had people through the years, especially when I was a youth pastor, come, oh yeah, some of my friends, we had a Ouija board, and it really worked. Like wanting to convince me. And I'm like, I believe it worked. You do? Yeah, there's demons are wanting to talk to you, trying to figure out ways to talk to you. Yeah, I totally believe there are more spirits out there than we want to realize, and they're looking for avenues. Of course it works. And of course, Satan does have power within whatever limitation God gives him. And of course, all the fallen angels as well. And so he says, if there's a prophet, but it's a false prophet, or a dreamer of dreams. I have in my lifetime met guys, some of them are quote unquote Christian pastors, that were so charismatic. I can't even explain it. I mean, you could literally sense when they entered the building, even though it may still be a half a mile away. You could just sense their presence. And it was scary to me. It was like, I know I could be a bit charismatic, and I'm just like, God, any of that stuff I want to put to death. But these guys, whatever whim they get, whatever comes to mind, they say, and they just steer people this way and that way. And I think we're observing demonic spirits through quote-unquote Christian pastors of some megachurch. I think what they're saying, it's palatable, but it's right from the pit of hell. This is where in 2 Corinthians 11, Paul says, hey, if Satan comes as an angel of light, how much more his prophets, how much more his apostles? And if Satan were to appear right now, he would be beautiful to us. It would just, everything about him would just be so wonderful. It would just be an overwhelming sense of, wow, how can I not want to like this guy? How can I not want to follow this guy? It would just be overwhelmingly pleasing to our human sinful flesh. And so these false apostles and prophets, they are pleasing, and they do have power, and they can predict things. Now, you ever see some of these social media guys that have been around 10 or 15 years, and they'll get on there and they'll go, remember, I mentioned, 10 years ago this was going to happen, and now they'll show their little clip from 10 years ago, and here it is happening. And I'm like, dude, you said 1,000 different things a week that were going to happen. How could you not be right? I mean, even a broken clock is right. I mean, these guys are prophesying stuff like continuously. And so it just statistically, mathematically, they're going to be right on occasion. But you say, okay, cancel out all prophets, cancel out all dreamers of dreams. No, that is a valid way God speaks. Remember back in Numbers chapter 12, verse 6, he said, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in visions, or I speak to him in a dream. Man, a lot of people God spoke to. Remember Joseph? He laid down he had the dream, and he woke up and told his family, and they didn't like the dream, but eventually it came true. And there's many of those. Now, as we come to Jeremiah, boy, there was lots of prophets and lots of dreamers, and they were just prophesying absolute demonic lies. But it was so powerful, they could not listen to Jeremiah. They could only be overwhelmed by these very powerful, charismatic leaders. Man, God spoke to wicked kings like Abimelech through a dream. Remember that in Genesis 20 when he said, man, don't mess with Abraham. He's my guy. And Jacob, of course, he laid down on a rock and had a dream, angels ascending and descending. Laban, Jacob's father-in-law, who said, don't touch him, leave him alone, don't speak either good or bad to him. The Midianites, remember the story of Gideon and Judges? These soldiers had a dream, and it was the sword of the Lord and Gideon coming down like a rock and pounding them. And they're like, we got to get out of here. We're going to lose tomorrow. And Gideon heard that dream they were having and encouraged his heart greatly. Solomon had a dream where God said, hey, your heart is right. Ask whatever you desire, and I'll give it to you. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Then Daniel had a dream about Nebuchadnezzar and his dream. Joseph had a dream, as I mentioned, and ended up the Joseph married Mary. Joseph and Mary, where God told him to take Mary his wife, and then later another dream to leave and go to Egypt. Pilate's wife had a dream about Jesus and said, Pilate, don't have anything to do with this. This is not going to be good. But Solomon, interesting, said in Ecclesiastes 5:3, for a dreamer comes through much activity. A dream comes through much activity, and a full voice is known by his many words. Also in Ecclesiastes 5:7, for in the multitude of dreams and many words there is also vanity, but fear God. So he sort of puts it down. And I'll just say this. I think dreams a lot of times are us trying to figure out things that we can't figure out with the noise of the day. And dreams are where we're still trying to figure it out. And sometimes while we're sleeping, our brain can connect all the dots. And we can have a dream that helps, just on a natural sense. I think dreams help us. But God can speak. We know how the Lord does indeed. Even to these days, the old men shall dream dreams, and the young men shall see visions, right? And women as well. But the people that are always saying, I've met people, it's like they always have a prophecy, they always have a dream. And they're always trying to steer the church from the back row by these dreams and visions and prophecies. And there's just a point, it's like, man, I had a dream, you want to hear about it? No, I don't. Oh, you're not open. It's like, I'm open. God's just going to have to use a different channel. Because I've heard too many of your dreams and visions and prophecies, and I just don't, it has no clout with me anymore. So I think that if it does happen, it's few and far between, and it's something that's very clear, not something that's, well, what do you think it means? Oh, I think it means this. I think it means that. I think it could be this. It's like, no, God's not going to speak confusion like that. But remember that these guys having signs and wonders. Remember, this is going to be why a lot of people believe in the Antichrist. In 2 Thessalonians 2:9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power. Whoa! All power, signs, and lying wonders. In Mark 16:17, about us believers. And these signs shall follow those who believe. In my name, they will cast out demons. They will speak with new tongues, and on he goes. So it seems like there's moments in time within the Bible when God is making a shift of a new dispensation, if you would, where there are miracles and signs and wonders. So the early church, there were signs and wonders to follow in that early dispensation of the church. But it didn't follow. And if you go back, even through church history outside of the scripture, we see those different moments in time. And I'm all open and ready for God to do that in a mighty way. It does say, these signs will follow those who go out, who believe. I have a good friend of mine who's a pastor, and he does missionary work all over the world. And he's in India and Afghanistan and all these places. And they see miracles all the time. And he's like, if you want to see miracles, don't sit around the church and sing hallelujah. Go to Afghanistan and preach the gospel. You'll see miracles there or you'll die. But we see miracles all the time. People healed, just every day, miracles, because we're preaching the gospel where it's never been preached before, and signs and wonders are there to confirm the word. But even in the midst of that, man, we've got to know the truth and let the truth discern. Remember what Paul said in Galatians 1, verse 8 and 9? But even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you than what we preach to you, let him be accursed. Interesting, in the Greek, there's two different words for another. And the one word is another, one of the same kind. Like you're having some coffee and I see you're done. I say, can I get you some more coffee? One of the same kind. Then there's another Greek word that it's like you're drinking coffee and you're like, whoa, it looks too strong. Can I get you a Coke? Can I get you another? Can I get you something different? And this is where Paul is actually using the word. Even though they say it's another of the same kind, it's not one of the same kind. It's not like, oh, it's the same gospel that Paul's preaching, just a little bit changed. He's saying, let them be damned to the lowest part of hell, anathema, accursed. If, as we have said before, so I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what we have received, let him be accursed. So here, say, even it's me, some guy that shows up. Remember, we're going to see here in the end of this book that Satan, we know from the book of Jude, tries to get a hold of Moses' body. Why? Because I think he wanted to appear saying, hey, I got some additional stuff to share with you. I think he wanted to say, let's use Moses' body to see him. Paul's saying, if my body shows up, it looks like me, it's not me. I'm not going to tell you something different, even if it's an angel from heaven. And of course, in Acts, in the last days, God's Spirit would pour out. And then we would see those signs and wonders. But notice the warning Paul gives to the church of Ephesus in Acts 20, verse 28 to 32. Therefore, take heed to yourself and to all the flock whom the Holy Spirit has made you overseers to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure, wolves will come in, there it is, from among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourself men will rise up speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after themselves. That's it. Therefore watch and remember that for 3 years I did not cease to warn everyone night and day with tears. Paul didn't just preach to teach them the Bible. He always said, and I'm warning you, don't take another truth that's similar but not the same. And I had to pound this into you guys night and day with tears. It was a great labor, very emotional, very passionate. So now, brethren, I commend you to God, and I love this, the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among those who are saved, coming back to grace. I think of that story of Elijah. Remember when he was facing off with the wicked king, Ahab and Jezebel? And he says, get your Baal prophets, and let's see who is God and who's not. And they make a sacrifice. Remember the 400 Baal prophets? And it says they're cutting themselves, they're praying. And they were confident that fire would come out of heaven and consume the sacrifice. They were just all day, all night, they just were just blown away that it didn't happen. And then Elijah comes and says, get some water. It was a time of a drought. There hadn't been water for 3.5 years, so that was a big deal. Get 3 water and drown that sacrifice with water and make a big trench and just fill it up, because he didn't want a freak spark. He didn't want somebody to say, well, I think one of his proteges helped him get that going. No, it's going to be God or nothing. And of course, fire came down and consumed it and licked up all the water. The real miracle in that story is not that God brought fire to heaven. The miracle of the story is that Satan didn't, because that seemed to be something that was on his ability, but God stopped him from being able to do it. And as we get to the last days, the Antichrist, that's one of the things that's going to completely convince a lot of the world, is he's going to call fire out of heaven. So again, I do know, I had a pastor that discipled me, Pastor Long. He was a missionary for years in Argentina. And down in the jungle, these witch doctors, they had power. They had power to fix broken bones and heal people from horrible snake bites. And of course, they required a lot of loyalty with doing such miracles, but they did them. And when he came down there, that was one of the things to convince these people that even though you're getting these miracles from these witch doctors, it's not from God, it's from Satan. So I think that Satan can do powerful things to deceive. And he says plainly, this is happening to test you, to know whether you would love the Lord your God. So it's a part of the test. Are you going to go with the miracles and the signs and the wonders and these miraculous, very charismatic guys that are enticing you to follow them? And I'm going to go with whoever's doing the biggest miracle, that's who I'm going to follow. Or are you going to follow me because I'm the truth and you love me? What did Jesus say in the Gospels? It's a wicked and perverse generation that what? Seeks after signs. They were wanting the miracles, and he said, you know what? That is not how God wants you to follow him. Well, in Deuteronomy 13, verse 4 through 5, you shall walk after the Lord your God to fear him, to keep his commandments, to obey his voice. You shall serve him and hold fast to him. But that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken in order to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to redeem you from a house of bondage, to entice you from the way to which the Lord your God commanded you to walk, so that you put away the evil from your midst. God brought you out of that mess. Remember in Egypt? Did they have power down there? Oh, they sure did. Remember when Moses came down there and threw the rod down and put the hand in, and it came out leprous and all this? What did Jannes and Jambres do? These magicians of Pharaoh. They had that power too. They kept matching Moses and Aaron. But then there came the point where the fleas, I think, or the lice that came in, and they're like, hey, this is the hand of God. We can't do this. But yet there was great power. And he said, I brought you out of that darkness. I brought you out of that place with those sorcerers and prophets, and I brought you now unto me, to know me. And so, again, it was by a mighty hand that I did this, but just because I'm not doing another miracle for you today doesn't mean that you don't want to follow me. And so in the Old Testament, it's literal and physical. In the New Testament, it's spiritual. So we don't put them to death, but we do mark them as heretics. And if they don't stop, we kick them out. Okay? In Romans 16:17, now I urge you, brethren, note those who cause division, offenses, contrary to the doctrine you have learned, and do what? Avoid them. It doesn't say stone him to death. This is probably after kicking him out of the church. Avoid them. In 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 14 and 15, if anyone does not obey our word in this epistle, note that person and do not keep company with him, that he may be ashamed. So don't fellowship with him. Yet do not count him as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother. So I believe he believed on Jesus. He's born again, but he's listened to this charismatic guy or went off into this false doctrine, and he began to hinder the church. And so eventually we had to kick him out. But even now, he's not some guy going to hell. He's still going to heaven. He's just somebody who's so contrary to the truth of Jesus right now, we can't fellowship with him. Interesting, isn't it? In 1 Timothy 6, verse 3 through 5, if anyone teaches any otherwise, does not consent to the wholesome words, even to the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, to the doctrine which accords with godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but is obsessed with disputes and arguments over words, to which come envy, strife, rivaling, evil suspicion, useless wranglings of men, corrupt minds, dispute of the truth, who suppose that godliness is a means of gain. From such people, what? Withdraw yourself. So these guys are in the health and wealth movement, and stay away from them. Don't have anything to do with them. I like 2 John. I've quoted this a lot. Down where I lived, there was a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses in the area. It says, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house, nor greet him. For he who greets him shares in his evil deeds. And I had to explain to Christians, you open your door and you talk to them and you take their literature because you culturally, the Spanish, the Mexicans, Latinos, and the Filipinos, it just was not in their DNA to shut the door in somebody's face. And they just always had to be nice. But what they did is they're solid Christians, but their neighbors across the street said, well, I love what God's doing in their life, and they're opening the door. I'll open the door as well. And you're actually helping sell their false doctrine by having this conversation. Now, I would say the exception to that is if you're called to, as an apologist, to debate them, then do it. But again, be aware that you need to talk to your neighbors and say, I'm not agreeing with them at all. And now in verse 6 through 11, he says, it may get really personal because this dreamer of dreams of this prophet might be your own relative. If your brother or son of your mother, or your son of your daughter, the wife or your bosom, your friend who is as your own soul secretly entices you and says, let us go and serve other gods which you have not known, neither you or your fathers, of the gods of the people which are around you, near to you or far from you, the one of the earth to the other end of the earth. So it doesn't matter if it's from the Canaanite area or not, anywhere on the earth, any other religion. You shall not consent to him or listen to him, nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall spare him or conceal him. But you shall utterly kill him. Your hand shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of the people. And you shall stone him with stones until he dies, because he sought to entice you away from the Lord your God and put you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of the bondage. So all Israel shall hear and fear, and not again so much wickedness as this among you. I saw this back with the group, the Boston movement of the Church of Christ. You remember that group? Kip McKean. He eventually had a breakdown and stole everything and disappeared. But it was religion that went from 0 to millions, mostly college students. And it had a number of people that had gotten saved in our church with their siblings often became leaders in these cult. And it was a cult I had to fight and debate regularly. But it was such a grievous thing for them because, again, in the Spanish culture and the Filipino culture, family is so close. And to be at such odds with your own brother who's a part of this cult the whole Thanksgiving meal, trying to proselyte everybody into this cult. And to say, you've got to stand your ground on this. It was a very, very hard thing, especially if it's your own child. Jesus said the challenge very well may come to find out. Remember Matthew 10:37, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. In this case, God said, I'm doing this to test you. And in this case, it's like, do I love the Lord more than my own intimate family? And I won't tolerate even my own son or my own brother to be a heretic and to allow them to have full reign within my family. No, I will not do that. Now, in verse 12 through 14, he's saying here, you have a responsibility, even if this isn't not only in your own family, but in another city. If you hear someone in one of your cities, which the Lord your God gives you to dwell in, saying, corrupt men have gone out from among you to entice the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known, then you shall inquire. Number 1, search out. Number 2, ask diligently. Number 3, and if indeed it's true, certain that such abominations are committed among you. So yes, you are your brother's keeper. It's like, that's that place 100 miles away or 50 miles away, whatever it is. It's not in our city. We don't do it. I don't know what they're up over there, but I've got my own problems. He goes, no, it's your problem. And if you hear something is funky over there, you need to go check it out. Now, there's a story in Joshua 22. We'll be there in a couple of weeks. Joshua, right? Chapter 22. It's, again, that group that stayed, Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe Manasseh that stayed on the other side of the Jordan. Well, they decided to build an altar there. And the other tribes heard about it, and they said, we got to go kill them. They're an abomination. They're worshiping a pagan god over there like we thought they would. And they said, slow down, everybody. Let's do what he said here. Let's search it out. Let's check it out. Let's investigate it. So they had a committee go down and talk to these people. And they said, no. We're worshiping the Lord. No, we're not doing sacrifices here. No, we're not. We're going to go to the place God chooses, all this. We just did this as sort of just a reminder that we're not a part of the pagan world over here, that we're a part of Israel. And it's a very honorable thing we've done. And they inquired of it. They went back and had a conversation going, yeah, they just built a monument. That's it. It wasn't a false god. It wasn't an altar. And they let it go. But boy, their first reaction is we're going to go kill them all because they're heretics. Well, in verse 14 now, if indeed it's true and certain that the abomination was committed among them, you shall surely strike the inhabitants of that city, the edge of the sword, utterly destroy it, and all that's in their livestock in the edge of the sword. And you shall gather all the plunder into the middle of the street, completely burn with fire the city and the plunder of the Lord your God, to heap forever. It shall be built again. So it'll be a tell, a heap. The word heap there is a tell, T-E-L. When you go to Israel, you see these tells all over the place, where it used to be a city, but now it's just a mound. It's like a big pimple out in the middle of a flat land, but it's actually the site of an ancient city that's been destroyed, never been rebuilt on. And this is what he's saying. This is what's going to happen. Don't take any of their spoil, just burn it all up. So none of the accursed things shall remain in your hand, verse 17. The Lord may turn from the fierceness of his anger, show you mercy, have compassion on you, and multiply you just as he swore to your fathers, because you have listened to the voice of the Lord your God, to keep all his commandments, which I command you today, to do what's right in the eyes of your God. So again, it's a test. It's hard. It's hard confronting people. If you're a person that likes to confront people, there's something wrong with you. When I have to confront people, man, I I can't eat, I can't sleep, I am just in absolute torment until I have to confront them. But you do. And I've seen pastors where they have a very popular leader in the church. One particular situation in this church was they had a Bible study before the church service, sort of a Sunday school type thing for adults. And this guy was a psychologist. And he was teaching the Bible and doing really well, but he started adding more psychology, and eventually it was basically all psychology, and a big percentage of the adult population was in there. And then he started contradicting the Bible. And some of the elders said, hey, this has got to change. It's like everybody would be so upset. They love that class. It's been changing their lives. And it's like he's teaching heresy. Here it is. And the elders told the pastor repeatedly, and he did not do anything repeatedly. And eventually they decided that they needed to let the pastor go and have this guy start pastoring the church. And within, a couple of years, the church no longer existed anymore. It's a test for you. And this is what he said. When these guys come, these charismatic guys come, these dreamer of dreams, these guys doing miracles, these prophets, these guys, and they're leading people away. It's a test. And sometimes it's your own family. It's a test. Sometimes it's an entire city. That's the test. And it's not just one of you. It's everybody's got to come together and bring judgment on that place because it's a test. In 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, let no one deceive you by any means, for the day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that's called God, or that is worshiped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. I think we're going to see the spirit of the Antichrist. I think we may even see who the Antichrist may be before the rapture. I don't know. But we do know that even in Christendom, there is going to be a group of people, God bless them, they're saved, they're going to heaven, but they on earth have become completely unfruitful because they bought into the lies of this age. In 1 Timothy 4:1, now the Spirit expressly says in the latter times, some will what? Depart from the faith. Oh, they'll have faith, they'll have Christianity, it just won't be the true Christianity, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. Now, this is something he's going to say over and over again. I'm not going to read the verses, but in chapter 7 of Deuteronomy, he talks about this. Deuteronomy 14:3, he talks about this. Deuteronomy 17:1, he's going to talk about it again. Deuteronomy 17:4, Deuteronomy 18:9, Deuteronomy 20, verse 18. He's going to pound this point home that you can't sit on your hands. You can't be the ostrich and bury your head in the sand. That this is a test from the Lord for you to deal with these situations. And so we find basically, and out of Dave Guzik's commentary, he quotes a commentator by Morgan. And Morgan says, so we find 4 ways that people can do what's right in their own eyes and not pass the test. First of all, he says here in chapter 12 and 13, in chapter 12, he says curiosity. Oh, I wonder how the other religions do it. I wonder, hey, they those Eastern religions got some really good ideas. I don't think those Jehovah's Witnesses or those Mormons are all perfectly right, but they got a really good point on this verse here. The curiosity. Secondly, signs and wonders. You're just overwhelmed. How can it not be of God? It's so supernaturally powerful because there's a devil who's also supernaturally powerful. All lying signs and wonders eventually towards the end times he will have to deceive. And thirdly, to entice of human affections. They just are so lovely. They're so charismatic. Maybe your own family to draw you away. And then the fourth thing is the failure to discipline, to confront the false teaching, and eventually the false teaching consumes the truth. And so that's what we discover in these chapters. Well,